guys so much for coming on the podcast today. I am so excited to tell the fans this story. And I'm going to start by telling everybody, this is my older brother, Matt Evans. And this is Matt's wife, Kaeilin Evans, who everybody already knows you. And a lot of people know you just from us being on stage together all these years. But Matt was you were my bass player, my band leader, my right-hand man. You hired and fired all the musicians, ran the show, made the set list, all of that, for over 20 years on the road. Obviously, we grew up together doing music, but we both went pro in the mid to late 90s. And then after you and KK got married, which KK has already been a guest on the podcast, so you can go back and watch that episode and hear all about that. After you guys got married, I asked you to come out on the road and help me with Avery, with clothes, just, and you were excited to do it because you guys had just gotten married and you all wanted to be together all the time. So then it just ended up becoming an over 20-year time span that we were all on the road together all the time.
But it flew by.
I
can't believe that we spent that much time.
I can't believe it either. And now we hardly ever see each other because you're both in real estate.
Yep.
You're both way too busy for my taste.
Right.
And
Same.
I never get to see you guys.
Same.
And yeah.
And our kids are young. So like your kids are grown and we're going through all of
Yeah, you're in the midst of raising kids.
Yeah.
Your daughter Millie is just turned 11. And then Lucy is 4.
Yep.
So today is a story hour episode where we are going to tell a story of something that happened to us that we will forever share.
Right.
Not like we're already so close, but now we have this trauma bond.
We have a lot of those actually.
Yeah, we love trauma bonds. And so we're also joined at this experience that only 3 other people experienced with us and can understand what we went through. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy, you probably would have sold $1 million house this afternoon, but instead you're doing this podcast. So I love you both so much. And I'm so thankful that you're here.
We are glad to be here.
Yes. Thank you. Matt and I grew up doing music together. We started when we were very young. I was 4, you were 7. And we spent our lives on stage. We moved to Nashville together, had a little 7-year hiatus. Then we came back and then started doing professional music for 20 years. And then when you got pregnant with Lucy, and after Lucy was born, you both decided to come off the road because, bringing 2 kids out on the road would have been more of a challenge than just having Millie. Millie, who's here today, who we're going to meet in a little bit, grew up on the road just like my kids did. And so I think of Millie as one of my kids, and you think of my kids as your kids as well.
Absolutely.
We're all so close. It was the most magical time in life. I'm already crying.
I know. I love it.
I brought Kleenex though for that because my makeup turned out good today. So I'm just going to start with the story. When I married Jay, I decided to move to Birmingham, an area called Mountain Brook, so that he could be with his children and we could all grow up together. And then, it was quite a challenge for me, but I did it for love and I did it for his kids. Because we both had a dad who lived in another state, and it's not easy, when you're growing up and your dad's not in the same, within a 30-minute radius of you. And so living in Mountain Brook was a challenge because my bus had to come down and get me. I couldn't just leave from Nashville. It was more expensive. It was all that, but it was so worth it. And I loved raising my kids in Mountain Brook. But we were always trying to figure out what's the best way to get to the bus, the best way to get to a show. And we had a one-off. What is a one-off means that you're just going to do one show and then come back home. And usually they're higher paying gigs. And so they're worth it. Normally you try to string 2 or 3 or 4 shows together. So you and the band and crew were going to get on the buses from Nashville, head up to Minnesota.
Yeah.
you bus, right?
Yeah, it's almost 1,200 miles from here to Minoan, Minnesota. Where the show
Okay,
was.
wow.
So you leave
Great
like
routing.
in the morning and then you get there.
Yeah,
next morning.
pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Which sometimes those bus rides are fun.
Yeah,
But
Yeah, you
especially
just
without
settle
kids.
in and bring stuff to do, and
right.
it's
You
fun.
watch movies
Yeah.
and, to me, I enjoy that more than having to fly to
Agreed.
shows,
Yes.
which I had to do a lot from Mountain Brook.
Right.
Every single time I flew anywhere from Birmingham, I had to stop in Atlanta, because they
Yes.
don't have any direct flights, small airport.
Yeah.
So on this occasion, it had been a while since you had seen the kids, and since you had seen the kids because they were doing school
Right.
in life and sports. So I called you and I said, I have a private plane that can fly me to Minnesota for this show. It'll make it so much easier. Why don't you drive to Birmingham,
Right.
fly up with me, and then you and Matt can fly home with me and then spend the night and we'll have Sunday dinner with the kids. And then you guys can drive back home.
Right.
Because the kids were really missing you and,
Right.
we needed to have a get together. Sounded like the perfect plan. The guy that always flew me was a friend of ours named John, and he had his own plane. And so he had been flying me a lot and just really just charging me for fuel. So it was
Right.
very convenient for me. He was unavailable that weekend, and he said, I have a buddy who has a private plane. Where we lived in Mountain Brook is quite a wealthy area, and
Yeah.
we didn't fit in, but the other people were wealthy, and
They'll let you guys stay there anyway.
but we stayed anyway. And
You brought the celebrity there.
yeah, I brought the celebrity, not the money. And but everybody thought we had money, but singers don't make money like they used to because we don't sell anything except live shows, and we give our music away for free. So, however, he said, I have this friend who owns a plane, of course, naturally, and he's available. And I was like, great. He said, meet him at this airport at this time and he'll fly up. So you drove down, we got in the car, went to the airport.
Yes.
It was a beautiful day. It was the pilot. He brought a co-pilot, which I love because I'm always
Right.
afraid to fly in a private plane with just one pilot because
100%.
And it's usually just one pilot, right? With John Captain.
John, it was just him all the time. And I was always thinking,
Yes.
I was always kind of watching like,
And this
what would I do?
time
Is he
there
on
were
his
two.
phone?
Maybe.
Yeah. Or like if he had a heart attack or something like,
Right. How are you going to land that?
how am I
plane?
going to land this plane? And
that
but I always
happens.
just trusted the Lord and,
Right.
just prayed before every flight. Clearly we forgot to pray before this flight.
Or maybe we did pray, and that's why we are here to talk about it.
Absolutely. You're right. See, I'm already going to cry again. Got my Kleenex right here.
I'm dead inside today, so I'm sorry.
Are you tired?
No.
I dead inside.
I just made myself pretty stoic. It was traumatic. Well,
Oh, you're trying to be dead inside.
I'm trying to be dead inside, but you'll see, like, when I describe everyone's reactions, you'll see how, like, I can just keep it all in. I can't wait to talk about it.
Right, because
Right.
we'll hear the story of how you reacted to this. Okay, so
We'll hear your side and your side, but then the truth.
we go to the airport.
Right.
We meet the pilot. The pilot was in his 60s, I would say. Really nice man, and he brought a co-pilot who was also probably in his 60s, and he had spent his life doing those aerobatic shows, which is important for the story.
Yeah. I still remember what I was wearing because there is a picture of you and me in front of this plane.
Which we shouldn't have done.
Well,
Well, we
I mean,
took
that's
it once we got there, excuse me.
right. But, and I'm wearing that, like, I got this huge, like, cardigan kimono from probably Old Navy.
It's so
And it's
cute.
like Aztec. I should have saved it, but it was massive. But that's because I was 6 months pregnant.
That's
and I
right.
wanted to make sure private planes are always freezing.
Right.
It was in December too.
It was in December.
Right. And in the Midwest.
Yes.
So, like, all of those things, I wore a blanket on the flight.
You did.
there.
Yeah.
I wish I could find that photo, but it's in one of
have
my
it.
old phones. Oh, you do?
I have
Okay.
it somewhere. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the pilot brought his girlfriend, which sounds funny. I always try to tell people, like, when I say girlfriend, I don't want you to think that the pilot is like in his 20s. It's just that they had been dating for years, but they were a really sweet, couple in their 60s, and she was beautiful and very gracious and Birmingham, very Southern. And so we take off, we fly to Minnesota, and it was a perfect flight.
Yes. Perfect.
No turbulence. We had the best time. I probably fell asleep.
Yes.
We get to the airport. Road manager comes and gets us. We go do the show. I remember, I don't think I've ever told you guys this, but an anxiety crept up in me during the show.
Oh.
Just kind of I don't like to fly anyway. I don't love it. It's always a fear of turbulence and stuff.
Yeah. It's like a necessity and never a want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. And so that a kind of dread came up in me during the show. I remember going, we have to fly home private.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the winter. In the middle of the United States.
In the Midwest.
Right. And so it was, did the show. They took us all back to the plane. We brought dinner, after show food. We had a bottle of wine. And then we get there. And Matt, what did you start doing?
I took a video. the famous last words video.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you were acting like you were dying.
You have the video, right? I sent it to you.
Yes.
Okay.
I have the video, and we're going to drop that in.
Okay, here's the plane.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jan.
Thanks for everything.
Pretty cool. It's snowing here in Minoman, Minnesota.
Hey, y'all, I can sit in this little jump seat right here and let Matt stretch his legs.
Y'all just tell me where to go. You take your best seat. What kind of plane is this, y'all?
Citation. Yeah, Cessna Citation.
Oh, awesome.
It's a seat.
Here, turn the light on.
Yeah.
You got the door?
Yeah.
Very cool. I mean,
We're here at so-and-so airport.
We were in the airport.
Right.
Tiny airport. Nobody else was there. It's just like
It was dark.
11 o'clock.
It was 11 o'clock at night.
And all the lights were off, like in the
Everything was
little
off.
office area.
I think we went to the bathroom, all of us, and then we went outside and got on the plane. And as you guys were already on, I think, and I'm taking my little iPhone 6 or whatever it was and making a video, and I'm just walking around, kind of, and I'm asking Tommy and the other guy, what kind of plane is this? Just being curious.
Their last will and testament.
Yeah.
And
then I think I said, Matt, what are you doing?
Stop filming.
Stop filming.
Yeah.
Matt goes, hey, you should probably leave like a signed photo.
Yes.
And then we all go, no.
That's bad luck.
That's bad luck.
Yeah,
What if
leave a
you're
signed photo on the
"Thanks
desk
so much."
Yeah.
Yes.
in the airport. Yes, that's right.
It's truly one of those videos that had we not survived, it would have been in line with every other,
Everywhere.
that was a premonition type thing.
Right.
that
Absolutely.
happens to people
We
who
should
don't
not have
survive.
gotten on that plane that night, though.
Well, how would we know?
Well, there were a lot of signs.
It was snowy. It had snowed.
Yes.
It was completely cloudy.
Right.
So basically what happened was we get on the plane. As soon as we felt comfortable, we put our trays down. We started, eating our dinner, pouring glasses of wine.
Like your solo cup was filled up to the brim with red wine.
With red wine,
Right.
yes. And but I remember taking a Klonopin before that flight because I had anxiety about it. And I've told the story of when we were standing behind the shed and you went, when I was 8 and you were 11, and I was like, what? And you said, I just had this terrible feeling that something bad's going to happen to you. And remember, I thought you were teasing me, and I was like, Mom, Matt's saying something Matt's scaring me. And I remember Mom being like, Matt, stop. Nothing bad's going to happen. But you had a premonition the day before I got hit by a car.
Yeah.
It always gives me chills when he tells me that story.
What is that?
He's a
I
freak.
honestly do not know. I've thought about it a lot, and I don't know what to attribute that to.
The Holy Spirit.
I guess. I mean, I really don't know.
What would a premonition help?
I don't think it even has to have a purpose. It could have had a purpose.
Right.
Yeah, like maybe it gave you just 1 minute's pause before crossing that street.
Maybe
and
so.
That's why you didn't die, but you broke all of your limbs.
Or maybe it was, well, I don't know, because mom was, barefoot, carefree, and letting me ride my motorcycle all over the farm. But you did have a premonition. And it's kind of like what I was feeling on stage. Like I had a dread about flying home.
Yeah.
I remember, as we were getting our food out and our wine out, I said to you, hey, because I had been flying private a lot with John.
Oh, yes. I remember
And
you
remember
saying
I
that.
said, hey, it's going to be bumpy on the way up until we get through the clouds.
Yeah.
So don't freak out. And you're like, okay, because I knew you hadn't flown private in a while.
I had forgotten that you said that, but I just remembered it now.
Yes.
Yes.
And how you were trying to comfort him. That was that's weird too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Were
It's
you
like the
uneasy
reverse.
I can't.
Do
Were you
what?
uneasy that night?
No, I don't remember being uneasy at all.
No.
I only thought I don't have to ride the bus home.
Yeah, we're going to get home. And I was excited about you guys coming home because
Right.
I'd had La Villa shop and get all this food to make for
Right.
Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about that weird thing.
The premonition that you had before I got hit by a car, the day before.
So the way I remember it, so we had the yellow shed, the utility shed. We were riding motorcycles around the shed, and I stopped, and you kept going, and you came back around, and I stopped, and I was like, "Oh crap!" And this is kind of emotional for me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Erin.
See, Erin, it makes everybody cry.
Like, I think you can talk about. And how was your mom to you that day?
She was mean. No, she wasn't mean. No, I just remember. I remember being stopped, and you came back around, and it was sort of like a trance, but not a trance. And I just was like, wow, this is weird. And then you came back, and you're like, why aren't you riding? And you pulled up beside me, and I go, I just think something bad's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think we just left it at that.
Yeah. And I remember feeling scared.
Yeah.
Because you looked off into the pasture.
Yeah, I remember it was like, it was just it was not a voice. It was not any kind of, it wasn't like a bodily feeling. It was just it was sort of it was just a specific thought that came into my head.
Like a scary thought that popped into your mind.
Yeah. And it wasn't,
He still
it wasn't,
has those.
Huh?
You still have those now.
I do.
Sometimes you're like, I'm like, we were going to leave the girls with my mom to go somewhere. And he was like, I don't think we should leave them. I just have a weird feeling. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll listen to you because
Right.
you've got this.
Well, and I mean, I forgot what I was going to say. I had a thought about it, but it was more just a clear thought. It
Right.
wasn't, anything. And I don't remember being scared about it. I just remember like, oh, this is going to happen.
And in my memory, I thought you said I feel like something bad's going to happen to you.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did.
It was about you.
Yeah, it was
about
it
me.
was directed to you about you. Yeah.
But when we were very little, we used to play with, superhero dolls and, pretend that. And so Matt and I, we were best friends all through our childhood growing up. And it was always me and you and Jay, our older brother, not Jay Barker, because obviously I wasn't dating him at 7.
Right.
But
And thankfully he's not your brother.
correct, that would be weird. But you and I would always play like superpowers and super friends, and we had this agreement that, okay, if we ever hear a ringing in our ears, that means the other one's in trouble. So he was like Superman and I was like Wonder Woman. And so if you hear a ringing in your, and so to this day, anytime I get a ringing in my ears, I'm like, I better check on Matt.
Is that called bursitis? Or is that what I just call it for fun?
It's
tinnitus. Or tinnitus, which you're constantly in trouble because it never stops in my
I'm
ears
so
now.
sorry.
Yeah.
I can't believe you have tinnitus.
The good thing,
It's called tinnitus? Really?
I think some people say tinnitus, some people say tinnitus. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
They have drugs for that now that heal it.
I've kind of
say-
gotten used to it.
Luckily, I don't have that.
The good thing is right now the cicadas cancel it out, so
You're always
No
like, hello.
shit.
it's working fine.
Oh, sorry, Millie. The cicadas are making me insane. That's a whole other story.
Do you know it's only male cicadas?
Yeah, they sing.
Well, they're not, kind of.
Yeah,
It's like they're making this mating call with their hollow bellies.
yeah.
I had to look it up.
It's crazy.
They're like, "Ah," all the time. I'm like, do
And then
the
it
women
stops at night.
cicadas? Right.
Yeah.
They're
They're
bound to
like-
be
they're
tired
mating.
after singing all day.
They're
They've
mating.
got to be hoarse. I mean, if I sang all day long. So
They'll cut this
Sunday
out,
dinner.
I'm sure.
so I was excited about you guys coming over for Sunday dinner, and we were just, happy, and we were taking off, and again, we had a perfect flight that morning.
Right.
So we get up to, how many feet would you say we were up in the air?
When it happened, when everything happened, I think we were probably
11 or
because
1200?
we came down quite a bit, so we were probably 3,000 to 3,500,
Okay.
maybe more than that.
I think it was less. We had just hit the cloud line.
Right. And I
they-
don't think we had hit that point where I think we had just hit the point where you are kind of coming above the clouds where you feel a little more straight.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not climbing as much.
right.
It kind of felt that way to me, like, okay,
Right.
now we can start eating.
Yes. But what was so strange is that the way I remember it, and do you guys remember it this way? Like when they were telling us what happened, they said we took off an autopilot.
Yes.
Or no. I'm sorry. We took off
Manually.
and then right when they got into the cloud coverage, they put it on autopilot. So that would make sense that we were more leveling out.
Yeah, we were starting to level
Right.
out, switch to autopilot, and that's
Right.
when everything went crazy.
The gyroscope failed.
Yeah. So the gyroscope is a piece of equipment that tells your airplane if you're right side up.
If you're level. So the instrument that tells you where the wings are, everything if you're level.
When
Yes.
you look on the panel, you'll see it as a plane with wings. And
Exactly.
it's going like that.
And it's pressurized.
Yes.
So when it failed, it lost the pressure and it goes vroom. And so the
'Cause-
autopilot was like, great. The plane went over.
Well, because as soon as they went to autopilot, the gyroscope, because it was broke, told the airplane that we were upside down.
Yeah.
So it forced our airplane to flip upside
Right.
down. So what we were feeling was in the beginning felt like turbulence. And I remember specifically going, whoa,
Yeah.
like,
But you had a full cup by that point.
yes.
I always
Yeah.
tell this story. I bring this story out at parties.
Yeah.
You know, like if it's weird at all, I'm like, I almost died in a plane crash.
Yeah.
And then I go through the whole thing.
Exactly.
And I'm like, and she had this cup and it was filled to the brim. Like,
Yes, because we'll get to that. So we just started understanding that we were in chaos.
Well, the first thing I remember was the back end of the plane went
kind
up.
of moving.
Yes.
That's the
Right.
first thing.
And you yelled out, whoa.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then right after that, it felt like it settled down. It felt like, okay, that was weird.
That
And I
was just
thought-
a big bump of turbulence.
Yeah, because to me, it felt like, so we were ascending. And of course, that takes a great amount of thrust and they're,
Right.
piloting accordingly. But then it felt like, so maybe we were supposed to level off, but they leveled off too quickly.
Right.
Yes.
So the back end went up.
Right.
And
Which
then,
was a horrible feeling.
Yes, but then
But actually we were
everything hit.
spiraling.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
We weren't yet.
Not yet.
But
Yeah.
the spiral,
Yeah.
we didn't feel anything different other than like kind of woozy.
Well, so
And like the wine, nothing was spilling or anything.
yeah.
Right.
Or spiraling.
Well,
Right.
so go ahead.
Well, so we felt that bump. It felt terrible. It scared me because I knew that this seems like more than turbulence, but I didn't want to freak anybody out. And you're right. There was a little bit of peace for a moment, and then all
That's
hell
it.
broke loose.
That's it. Yeah.
these alarms started going off
Yeah.
in the airplane, and we were just so we didn't know what was happening, because when you're inside an airplane, you don't know.
Right.
What happened was we turned upside down. We started going down. The pilot's girlfriend started screaming,
Yeah.
Tommy, 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 Tommy. That's when I knew, because I'm like, she flies with him all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So she's terrified, and we should be also. So it was chaos. It was just like throwing us around.
But not really like too much of that, because like nothing was spilling, you know?
Right. But
Like-
we were upside down,
Yeah.
and we never knew it
That's the thing. That's
until they told us.
so that, to me, in my mind, I always try to think of, all right, what actually happened, like physically to the plane. So we're ascending, not on autopilot yet,
Right. Manual.
going up,
Right.
and then the bump happens in the back. And so it feels like we stopped ascending and that we just leveled off and that we're getting ready to go like that.
Was that when it was switched over to autopilot probably? I guess that doesn't really matter. But
I think they had already switched over, because that's when the gyroscope failed. So the gyroscope tells you if you're level.
if you're like this.
When it fails, so I won't get into he explained this all to you. I won't get into the like two specific parts of it, but it reads wind coming into the front of the plane, and there's a little suction cups that rotate, and that's what it reads from
Okay.
that. So when that fails, it automatically goes to the left. So that picture of the plane that you see on the instrument panel, it'll just flip to the left. So when that happened, the autopilot read, oh, we're drastically flipping over to the left. So it auto corrected. So we're over to the right. So we're going up like this, bump happens, gyroscope fails, and the autopilot automatically went like that, flipped us over.
right.
They realized, oh, okay, the gyroscopes failed, take it off autopilot. But when that happened, when they're doing this and starting to be upside down, they had to decide, because they were disoriented. It was dark,
Right.
no lights,
No stars.
in the
Out of
clouds.
autopilot.
In the
in the
clouds.
clouds.
Right.
There was nothing to base it on.
And
Nothing.
nothing was falling. Like
Nothing.
nothing was spilling to
Right.
make you think that you were upside down.
Correct.
So their choice was, we either pull out of it or we push out of it. Because if you're upside down like that, if you pull back on the yoke, then you're going to do that and do a U-turn. If you're upside down and you push forward, you're going to continue to go forward upside down, but you're going to crash. So one of two things. And he said that he stayed up all night. He was just mortified at the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So the next morning we get up having breakfast, and he explains what happened, and he did what they call a split S maneuver. And that's
And a split S maneuver is not meant to happen in this kind of
No.
plane. What kind of plane was it?
it was a Cessna. Yeah, I think a 140 or 120. It's on the video. I think it's on the video.
Okay, yeah.
So that was one of the questions I asked. And
Yeah.
so we do this, and the split S maneuver is a maneuver that fighter pilots do to evade the person
Right.
behind them.
Right.
Because if you're getting chased, you turn to the left, they're going to follow you. You go up, they're going to follow you. So you do this drastic maneuver where you roll and do a U-turn basically and go the other way. Then you're out of danger. So that's the maneuver that they did, and that was the correct one. In our case, it was the right thing to do that saved our lives.
Right.
So we're going up, we turn over, we're falling, and that's why I think we didn't know. That's why we didn't know we were upside down. That's why your wine didn't spill, because he just instantly was like, "We're not that high. I don't have that much room to play with altitude wise. So I'm going to make a decision and pull back." When he pulled back,
Split second
that,
decision.
even though we were upside down, that slammed us into what was physically the
seats.
bottom of the plane, but the top of the plane that way. So we felt like we were being pushed down.
It felt like we were being pulled down, but we
Yeah.
were actually going up.
And that's what was so disorienting, because we didn't know we were upside down, because we felt like we were being pushed from the top.
Right. And nothing would have, because
Yeah.
you would think if we were upside down that like our purses or a pencil or
Exactly.
something
I thought we
would
would
fall.
have felt it. Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm upside down.
But we knew when it flipped, like, I remember you grabbed you were holding your cup and you immediately went down and you were like, whoa, what the hell is going on? And you got stuck there.
Yes, because
the G's started to be pulled.
yeah. So we were, I've been told that we were half a second from hitting the ground because all these pilots in Birmingham have studied our flight.
Yeah, I used to have a snapshot of our.
I think
flight
Jay
path.
still has it because Jay got on that. John told him, he said, you can look at what their flight did. So Jay watched it
Okay.
like 1,000 times,
Yeah.
freaking out.
Yeah.
Because it's terrifying to see what our plane did.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
turning over.
Yeah.
So once they decided we're going to pull up because we're now right side up again, the G-force of trying, because there needed to be so much G-force to
Yeah.
get us back up because we were this close to the ground,
Yeah.
that's when it threw me to the floor.
As he's doing this number and we're upside down, obviously he's headed to the ground.
Towards the ground.
So he's got just a certain amount of space to deal with. And so,
Right.
and I don't know if he, like in the midst of that turn, realized how close we were to the ground and really, gave it everything he had and pulled back. But I remember you being sideways.
Yes.
And you were still upright.
That's because I
And-
had a big belly
You had a big belly.
and I had breathed in. And they
Yeah.
always say, like, when you do G-force training, they say you have to kind of fill your chest full of air just to stay
and then do
upright.
like a sit-up
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, and which
feeling.
that's kind of like me. So I got the back row seat. I could see everything that was happening.
Yeah, I was flying. It
You
was
were
actually
fully to the ground.
Yeah.
It was kind of like this, except in reverse. You were sitting there facing me, and you were over there,
Right.
Yeah.
and the pilots were behind me, so I was looking backwards.
And the pilot's
and
girlfriend
then
was in that little jump seat.
She was right here.
Yeah.
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 So when I got thrown to the ground, there's nothing in the world that I could have done to pull myself up because the G-force was so strong.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, that I remember thinking like I'm passing out because
Yes.
literally the blood is being
Right.
forced out of your head. And what you did instinctively is what pilots are trained to do when they're doing that. They tense up to
Right.
keep the blood in place. To keep
So
it from
tell
draining out.
them what you started saying. So you felt yourself passing out and you thought, if I'm passing out, what if the pilots are passing out? So
Yeah.
you also saved our lives by screaming at the pilots. Tell them what you said to the pilots.
I don't remember exactly
You
what it
Well,
was.
started
you
yelling.
started yelling at them.
Okay.
Don't
pass out.
Okay.
Don't pass out.
Gotcha.
Don't pass out.
Meanwhile, they're going like this.
They're like, thanks
Well,
for the
and
reminder.
so I was thrown to the
That's
floor.
exactly how you were right there.
Yeah, but my head was on the floor.
But you could see.
And I said, "What the hell is going on?"
Yes.
I remember yelling that because it was just so much chaos and we wouldn't get out of it. And I was
No.
like, I fully accepted death. Fully accepted death
Yeah.
at that moment. And all I thought was, I'm about to cross over and be standing in front of Jesus, in front of our Father. And that I wasn't scared because I was like, everybody dies and I am dying right now.
Yeah.
We're dying right now. We're in a plane crash and
Yeah.
we're dying.
And
I fully accepted it.
But Matt's reaction was like the complete opposite to you.
Yeah, because he had a wife that was pregnant. Life beginning.
It's a dude thing too. It's a fix it thing instead of like
You
know,
invoked any fix it that could possibly be invoked.
I prayed to God. I prayed to the Son. I prayed to the Father. I
Angels!
prayed to the
Yahweh!
angels. I asked the
Yeah.
angels. I said,
Jesus,
anybody listening?
angels, Jehovah,
I know.
God, Jesus, Heavenly Father, Sarah. And you were yelling at me too.
You guys were yelling so much.
We were yelling to each other, and Matt was yelling at me, and he said, "Oh God, Sarah, we're crashing, Sarah, we're crashing." And it was almost like, even though the two of you are married and you're one, it was almost like a revert back to, we started this whole life together. We're only 3 years apart.
Now you're going out together.
We grew up together. We've been, and it's like we were dying together. And it was so shocking to think this is
Yeah.
happening. It was
Yeah.
so shocking.
Well, and you were alone. We were together.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I was totally alone. And all 3 of my kids were at home. My husband was at home. But I wasn't afraid. And I tell this all the time. It is a blessing that we receive from the Lord that when something like that happens, there's a peace that comes over you. And that is how I know for a fact that heaven exists and that we are just in a part of life. Like we're in forever now. We're in it, just a part of it. I knew because I got saved when I was 21. And I just knew there was a tiny bit of excitement. It was the weirdest thing. Like I know I'm going to heaven. I know I'm about to meet the Lord. And you were yelling at the pilots. So I looked up with one eye and I could see both pilots sinking down in their chairs. They were passing out. If you had not screamed at them, and then the girlfriend, what is her name? Brenda, Deborah.
I was thinking the same.
Deborah. Oh, we're so bad.
I was not Susan.
Susan?
No.
Deborah?
Not Becky.
Rebecca?
No.
Okay, we'll think.
She's on the group thread thing that we do
Yeah,
once
she
a
is.
year.
We'll think of it. Okay.
Yeah.
So she heard
Like,
you
thanks, guys.
yelling at them not to pass out.
Yeah.
She caught on. She started yelling the same thing to them.
Yeah.
Tommy, don't pass out. So thank God you started feeling like you were passing out.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't have, because they were both goners.
Well, and so I remember, like being forced down in my seat and feeling like I was going to pass out, which is a really, really scary feeling.
It is.
But I mustered enough strength to look back at them. And so they're side by side and they're both pulling back on the yoke and literally going, like shaking. The entire plane is shaking.
Yeah.
They're sort of like collapsing in on each other.
That's terrifying.
And she's screaming. And also, so we still had the lights on, I think, from the takeoff.
Right.
Well, there were
And-
some sort of lights going on outside too. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
all these.
that's what I
yes.
mean. The outside lights are on because I remember looking out at the wing when she started screaming, and it looked like someone was crushing a Coke can. It was just
Yeah.
going.
and that's when you screamed even louder.
I was like,
for the heavens.
Gosh, this is actually happening.
It's
like
actually happening.
Yeah, and even though it was, how long do you think it took? 30 seconds?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, it was not even
like we just
Yeah.
made that an hour-long story for 30 seconds.
right.
But it
exactly.
felt, in the midst of it, it felt like it was in slow-mo.
It
Yeah.
did.
Like all,
I still think of it as in slow motion.
Me
Yeah,
too. I
exactly.
think of
Trying
it as
to
a
lift your
long
hand.
event.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing is not being able to lift your hand.
Right.
Like I was like, take my hand, let's die together. And
Yeah.
like
we couldn't because the
couldn't.
G-force
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
it was gravity force is what that means.
Yeah.
And so
We pulled
finally
G's.
I was able to pull myself back up and we finally felt a sense of calm. And this is the part that tears me up every time because once I realized that we were okay, that's when so the co-pilot turned around and all he said was, "We're okay now." They were both terrified, traumatized, so focused on getting us down safely.
Yeah.
So I think that's all that the words that he could muster up is "we're okay now." Well, once that happened, the girlfriend came back. We all got in a circle. And this is the part that kills me because then I was like, I want out of this plane right now. I could have clawed my way out of the airplane.
right.
And that's when you said, guys, we're actually not okay because the wing on the driver's side was crushed like a Coke can. Like if you took a Coke can and just stomped on it. And so he said, we're going to make an emergency landing in Fargo and we'll be on the ground in about 20 minutes. So I got on my phone and I called Jay. I was like, I'm just going to see if my phone will work.
Yeah.
And as soon as he picked up the phone, he goes, "What's wrong?" Because I had already called him, told him that we were taking off.
Right.
And he could hear that I was in the airplane still. And I said, we've had a little trouble with the plane, but we're okay now. We're going to make an emergency landing in Fargo. What do you mean emergency landing? I said, I'll call you in a minute. So we all got together, held hands. We were praying. We were thanking God for saving our lives because it was miraculous. I mean, we were half a second from plunging into the earth with that plane, and we were saved. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, I mean, I got hit by a car. Like every single time I keep getting rescued, by God. And then we were amazed that, thank you, that the wine didn't spill. We were still to this day, we're amazed at that.
That's like a party trick.
We were upside down.
I know.
And the wine never spilled.
I know.
Our food was still fine.
Right.
Not that we could have eaten anything after that. But so they had called for ambulances, fire trucks and all that stuff. When we got to the airport in Fargo, there were rescue teams basically there waiting for us, right? If that's how I remember it. And
because we called Jan too, the tour manager.
Our tour manager,
right,
who was a man named Jan, told everybody. I remember everybody on the bus, the band and crew, all started crying.
Yep.
Because they were so worried about us. And I called Mom, and I woke her up, and I said, and it's so funny that I wanted to call Mom.
I know.
Not funny.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
Of course,
Yeah.
it's natural.
Right.
Woke her up, and I said, we almost died in a plane crash. She was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I said, yes, we're fine. Praise God. We made it. And so we had car service come get us. Jan was calling all over Fargo. There were no hotels available.
It was like a hockey tournament or something.
Yeah, a big hockey tournament. And so the only hotel we could get was if
Howard
Ramada.
Howard Johnson.
Hojo.
Howard Johnson's. We
thought the worst of the night was over. Then we went to the hotel.
Yeah, we did. We thought we were safe. Then I remember we stopped at a store and we got some beer and some snacks because we hadn't eaten. And, they only had 2 rooms, I think. So the 3 of us had to share a room, and then the 2 pilots and the girlfriend had to share a room. And it was freezing cold. We walk into the lobby of the Howard Johnson's, and I swear it was not a hockey tournament. It was a meth convention.
Yeah.
I mean,
There was a
everybody there was
domestic
like
violence.
toothless.
Same thing.
Huh?
Same thing. Sorry. Just
It
kidding.
was a hockey tournament / meth convention. And I remember walking in, and this guy walks towards me and you, and he was like, hey, like flirting.
And you go, no.
Yeah. I was like, no, I will kill you. Like I can't cuss because we have a special guest here with us today that's young. But my adrenaline was such that I would have killed anybody.
Right. Well, I thought my belly would totally fend off anything.
Yeah.
But clearly at that particular Hojo, they liked pregnant girls
They
too.
like pregnant girls. Yeah. Yeah. That's what they're used to. And
Well,
so,
they had a domestic violence phone. Like there were cops there.
Yeah, there were
there were cops there.
when we
Yeah.
got
There was a
there.
big
Yeah.
incident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, wait, we did die and we went to hell. I thought we lived. We died.
Howard
and went to
Johnson,
hell.
please call us to sponsor our podcast.
Yeah, Howard Johnson's don't hate us, but your hotel in Fargo sucks.
But we
we
have some good
It's probably
advice.
been remodeled by now.
I hope so.
They still have that cigarette burned bedding.
Yeah, cigarette burn bedding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just all of it. So I remember sleeping out on the couch and just, I don't know, we were in shock probably.
Yeah.
And we got up the next day. Jay called some friends who had another plane.
Very
Exact.
same plane.
Very
Same plane.
same exact.
Very same plane.
Broken
airplane.
gyroscope, everything.
Yes. Sent it up there. We got up, we had breakfast, and we were talking to the pilots, and we said, how did you do it? And they said, God.
Yeah.
It was just God. They were like, we don't know, because we didn't know if we were upside down. The only saving grace was the co-pilot, who was accustomed to aerobatic
Right.
shows
Split S maneuvers.
and doing those maneuvers and knowing. So he had a feeling,
Yes.
you know, that we were upright. And so we go back to the airport. Jay called all of our friends. This is sad. And so we had all these friends in Mountain Brook come over, and they were waiting for us to kind of like surprise, you know, and
Love on you.
love on us. And I told Lavilla to go get a bunch of food, and we just kind of had a little party that night when we got home. But I remember the pilot that flew up the next plane, and he said, "Don't worry. It's a beautiful day. We had a beautiful flight up here, and I'm going to keep it on manual all the way home. So you don't have anything to worry about." I still took a Klonopin and probably downed a glass of white wine. And we had a great flight home, and, you know, had a wonderful reception waiting for us when we got to the house. But I went in to take a shower, and that's when I broke down. And I was just like, you know, because I think once I saw the kids,
Right.
and
You realize just how much was at stake.
exactly,
You're like, I want to see you, Jesus, but at the same time, I have more work to do
I
here.
have more work to do here. And I thought about how close I came to leaving my children motherless. And so I got in the shower, completely broke down. I remember Jay coming in there. I stepped out of the shower, and he like handed me a robe and just held me, and I was just like sobbing. And I think we were all paralyzed for about a week,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know I can't remember how long you all stayed.
I think we went back that night.
No,
Did we stay the night?
I think you stayed the night because we were all like, we didn't want to leave each other.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember the three
Right.
of us just wanted to like sit on the couch together and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I know. We talk about that all the time. Like, we're always like, what was it? Like, why did we make it? Oh, the weirdest thing was that there was a plane crash that weekend, and it was a famous Hispanic singer.
Yeah.
And she and like, it was almost like her brother and her makeup artist died in this plane. They didn't make it up over. And so it was when we got home. Didn't we go to dinner or something? We saw it on CNN.
We went to interview the new TM. And we were sitting at that restaurant, and it was
So
on.
it was like the next day.
It was on all the TV.
and it happened the same night as ours.
Yes.
And she died.
Yeah, they all died.
They all died.
Yeah.
And
That's just weird because they would show pictures and then you're like, this is what it would be like if it was our
Yeah.
plane.
And what our families would be going through.
And what's weird is, well, it's not weird, but if you were to go down the list of celebrities who have died in private plane crashes,
It's a lot.
it's a really
In the
long
Midwest and the
Patsy
middle of
Cline.
winter
people.
at midnight.
Hawkshaw Hawkins,
Hawkshaw
Cowboy
Hawkins.
Copus on that plane.
La Bamba.
Richie Valens, Buddy Holly, The Big Bopper, John Denver,
Yes.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Aaliyah.
Aaliyah.
Which that's a really interesting story. I'll send you a video on that. She didn't want to get on that plane. She had a feeling that she should not get on that plane,
Well, they overloaded it.
and they drugged her. And someone literally was carrying her onto the plane as
That's ridiculous.
Her head was back. and
That's
everything.
murder.
Yeah. So they get on, and I think she even said something about there are too many of us and there's too much stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the pilot knew that there was too much stuff and still did it anyway. But the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
I'm trying
I
to think.
remember
There's so
one
many
time,
more.
it was probably KK or maybe one of my kids or maybe you, but that were like, oh, don't worry because you're not that famous. So we'll never die in a plane crash with you.
I always tell Millie, I'm like, you were meant to be in this world.
Yes.
And that right there says it. You were
Yes.
meant to be in this world. You were meant to go on the road. We were meant to, you were meant to take your babies up.
Absolutely.
That's
And
the only explanation.
it's the only explanation. I've had 3 near-death experiences. I have 6 more to go. Oh, so recently we were going to Stagecoach.
Yeah.
And we were flying in a private plane. You know, I've overcome because my faith is so strong that I'm not afraid because we're commanded in the Bible not to fear. I mean, I think that's the thing that Jesus spoke more than anything. Do not fear, do not fear, do not fear. So, and I also think that, you know, God in our modern day grace, we have things that can help us with that because I do have to take a Klonopin when I fly because I'm nervous. I'm more nervous about the fear. Like if we were to get into some bad turbulence,
Right.
and then I would start panicking. And so, you know, that happened on our flight to Hawaii. We had about an hour of turbulence and I was freaking out. Jay was like getting the laptop out and turning on a movie for me and like to distract me.
Right.
And that was after our plane. I remember you and Craig Dunn and I flew shortly after the plane crashed to LA and we were very nervous. But yeah, so going to Stagecoach, we took off on this private plane that was just like the one we flew in and something happened and the pilots turned around. They said, we've got to go back. There's something wrong with the plane. So we go back, we landed and got on another plane. We take off. I might be getting some details wrong, but it's the gist of the story. Take off. All the masks drop. Did I tell you about this?
You told me about it.
It's just recently.
Yeah.
I think
All the
you
masks
called
dropped.
that.
Yeah, I probably called you.
Yeah, you called me.
Yeah, because I was scared, and we were like, "Oh my gosh!" And by the way, those masks don't work because mine did not drop far enough, so I couldn't even use it. We turned around, landed that plane, got on the first original plane.
What? The one with something wrong with
Because
it?
it was fixed by then. And we took off and I just had to have faith. Like, you know, I'm
You
going to
were
be
like
fine.
Aaliyah at that point.
Yeah.
So-
but I always, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You weren't.
I always pray for angels, you know, because the Lord will send his angels to surround your car.
Yeah.
I pray for my kids driving all the time, surround it with angels. So I just had to go on that.
Yeah. So you mentioned like being in the shower and like kind of letting that all out, like that, you know, stored trauma, which your body does remember all that. It records everything.
Yes.
John Deloney, he's my favorite. He calls it a GPS pin. So like when things happen to you, so like planes now, there's a GPS pin. Every time we're on a plane, it's going to recall what we went through.
Oh,
And
So-
like your trauma, like,
comes back.
yes.
Well, so
Same with anything that you've been through. Like,
Right.
That was my question then, based on that. Like, so did you ever have another incident where that, you know, something happened and then it all came flooding back? Like, or did you feel like do you feel like you got rid of it when you know, cried in the shower and got all that out?
I think, you know, I'm very grateful for my relationship with God because I rely on that so much. So I think as I pray and, you know, I'm constantly asking the Lord for peace that surpasses all of our understanding, you know, just asking for that. But more so, I think I have a gratitude of that we didn't die and that I didn't leave my children motherless. And, but every now and then, yes, something will trigger either getting hit by a car or the plane crash and cause me to have an extreme amount of fear.
oh yeah.
But then I realize that that's a sin actually to fear because we're told not to fear. And so I just try to really, you know, focus on God. Jay's great about talking me off the ledge. But even heading to Stagecoach, you know, knowing that we were going to fly private, even when Craig Dunn texted me and said, we've got an offer to be able to fly private out there. Well, I insisted that Jay come with me because I knew that would help me stay calm.
Yeah.
What about you?
So specifically, this is funny. So when we went to Australia, that long flight over there it didn't bother me at all. It was
Same.
You know, however many hours that was, 16 hours from
18
Dallas
hours.
to Melbourne or whatever.
Yep.
But one of the so we flew. We didn't have a tour bus there, so we flew to every show, and I think it was like 8 or 10 flights within that tour. Remember that?
Yes.
What is it? Tawanda? What was that?
Tamworth.
Tamworth.
So there was one flight, and I had not really had a freak out moment since our plane incident. But we were on that flight from wherever going out to Tamworth to that festival. And it was a prop plane, propeller plane. And the pilot said, he goes, this is a very turbulent flight. It's going to feel terrible, but it happens every time.
It's not dangerous.
Yeah. So we're flying and we're not that far above the ground, but it was super turbulent. It was rough. And I remember sitting there in the chair, and for some reason, like all of the like pent up
Stored
emotion,
trauma.
yeah, from our original incident, just like came back, and I remember like putting my head down and just sort of like convulsing and crying and getting it all out. But then I was like, I'm not scared of flying, and I wasn't scared of flying, but it was weird how that was all in there.
Yes.
And then something happened to bring it out, and I was like, wow, I've been carrying this around, because that was probably, well, that was actually the fall of 2013, which would have been about 6 months after that.
Yeah, it was not long after that. And
Yeah.
I remember I was very, very anxious before that flight.
Yeah.
But the flight turned out to be great.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, the flight home was not as good because it was claustrophobic. But
It was
I just
long.
want to, before we're about to run out of time, I want to bring in the baby that was
baby.
also in
Get back in my tummy.
that plane crash. And this is the reason that we did not die in that plane
agree.
crash, because this is Millie Evans, my niece, and I'm her favorite aunt. No, I'm kidding. You have a lot of aunts. But this is Millie, who grew up on the road with us, and Millie, who pregnant was KK with, and Millie, the reason that we all survived that plane crash, because you were meant to be born. And we're so grateful to God that you were
Absolutely.
born, because you are the best ever.
I'm glad you don't remember it.
And I'm glad you don't remember it. Yes. And also, Millie, never be afraid to fly,
Never.
because God is always in control. You won't fly?
She loves it.
She loves
Yeah,
flying.
flying is great. I actually enjoy flying a lot. I really
I love
do.
to fly. I hate to crash.
I hate
How do you know? You've never tried it.
We got close.
Right, we got close.
That's as close as I ever want to get.
Thank you guys so much
Thank
Of course,
you.
thanks
for
for
telling
having
the
us.
story. I hope we didn't forget anything, and we're gonna drop in pictures and videos and the video that you
Yeah.
took. I will just say, we're told not to fear, and I really try to be obedient about that, to not fear.
Yeah.
But I would say, let's never film before a
Never.
private plane ride again.
Never.
Yes, because
No.
we're clearly going to take a private plane again somewhere, and hopefully it'll be together.
Yes.
And I think that's what we should do, is
Yeah.
take a private plane, just the four of us,
Yeah, true.
somewhere together.
Yeah.
And then we know that we're all good. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah. I love you, Millie. And I love you guys.
Love you
Love
too.
you.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for
for
doing
having
this.